Welcome to this meeting of the Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Pete Pillinger, Chair of the committee. We have committee members in the Civic Centre along with officer support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and will be available on the Council's website. Some housekeeping relating to those in the Civic Centre. There are no planned fire drills, so it's the real thing if you hear it. And please leave by the emergency exits at the back of the room and congregate in the car park. Please turn mobile phones off and switch your microphones off when not speaking. So I'm just turning my phone off to remind everybody else. For those joining via Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. We'll now move on to the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence? I did see Councillor Bell last week and she was hoping to join on Teams, I think, but I don't see any sign of that. I know nothing more about Councillor Burton Johnson. Declarations of interest. Sorry, I need to just ask you to introduce yourselves. I'll start with Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, committee members and those members in the room and online, and any members of the public who may be watching. It's nice to have another meeting with the Scrutiny Committee, and it's my pleasure and privilege to act as the Vice Chairman. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Deborah Ashton. I'm a councillor for Charnock Ward in Penwitham, and I'm a member of the committee.
And my other colleagues on my right.
I'm David Bollenberg. I am a councillor for Bamber West Ward and a member of this committee.
I'm Will King and I'm the councillor for Longton and Hutton West.
Thank you.
Ben Story, Democratic Services Officer.
Darren Cranshaw, Head of Democratic Services.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. The minutes of the last meeting have been circulated. Are they correct? If they are, I'll sign them. Can you please just show your hands if you think they're correct, so that we got a thank you. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? I don't think we met before the meeting. I don't think there are any matters arising from the minutes. We'll continue. There is, in our agendas, some matters relating to, we keep a record of previous meetings' decisions and whether they've been implemented, and whether we therefore need to keep them on our agenda or move them on. There are a couple of items where what we have has not quite answered the question. Page 18, 9th of February, minute 6.6, and page 20, minute 7.5. So we take note of those. And Councillor Bollenberg, you've got comment.
There's also page 16, which is the item agenda draft budget. That the answer doesn't capture what I was actually asking.
So are you proposing, sorry, which draft budget one is that?
So on page 16, it's the first main bullet
Draft
point.
budget in the middle of the page.
Yeah, 5.3 welcomes the offer to provide further information.
Yes,
on council
so
tax
you want that
exemptions.
as a no rather than a yes?
Absolutely, that the answer isn't what I asked.
No. Okay, so we'll record that as a no. Thank you. And then we can move on to other items of the agenda. We welcome Councillor Colin Sharples, Cabinet Member for Planning and Licensing, and ask him to present his introductory report.
I'll turn the mic on. This is the update for planning and licensing. I'm not going to read through the whole report, it's obviously there in front of you. delighted to say that we've got some really good portfolio achievements so far. Central Lancashire Local Plan has completed the examination part and is moving on, isn't it? Planning obligations team restructured with significant improvements to process achieved 2.1 million extra seal generated, which is great news. The infrastructure funding statement has been published, reflecting the SIL monies and the S106 monies we received. Over 1,000 planning applications determined, and so on. There's a full list of items there. I'm not going to read them all out to you. Quite a few areas that require development, but we're moving forward. I don't think there's anything I need to read all of them there, but there are some of those things that are moving forward nicely. Rebranding the taxi licence regime is moving forward towards. In fact, we've got gold standard. I think now that needs to be rebranded. The important ones: plan for providing more affordable homes in the borough by bidding into the social and affordable housing programme funding. Managing the DFG budget pressures and case volume. Total value of DFG cases currently exceeds the available budget, indicating a need for improved financial forecasting prioritisation. Smooth transfer of the minor aids and adaptation service delivery. That's going really well. In fact, that starts in April. Everything's in place now for that. Preparing for the end of the eco scheme and transitions to the warm homes plan. Increasing uptake in the empty homes programme. Despite proactive engagement, there was no take-up. That's really sad. I know some of it's probate, and I think the rest of it's nervousness, tenants' nervousness, especially with the new Renters' Rights Bill. Quite a few challenges coming up. Local plan examination has been gruelling, to say the least. And we have had the letter back from the inspectors, their responses to what we've done so far and what they want us to work on. That's now ongoing. Obviously, staff retention is hard to fill certain posts, but specifically planning, enforcement and building control. Overall cabinet member summary comments I've put there. The breadth of the portfolio is recognised, but also the skills and experience within the team. I have to say, comparing this portfolio with my previous one, which of course was digital and customer, the thing with digital and customer was it was ongoing. Things did change occasionally, but it was sort of an ongoing portfolio. This one, it's a case of what comes up at any one particular time. So at the moment we're looking at the housing strategy. So that's been 3 or 4 weeks on that. And that's how it works. So it's sort of you look at something and then you move on to something else. So as portfolio holder, I'm at that stage where I've done some of it, but not done all of it. So it's plodding on. But I'm happy to take any questions from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you for your introduction. Can I ask, you mentioned the local plan. Will the response be a public document, or does that go into...
Yeah.
Is it a public document?
Yeah, not public yet, but I believe it's going to be public tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. How long have you held the portfolio, just for the people who are watching outside of this, among the councillors? And is there anything in particular that you are proud of leading as cabinet member for your portfolio?
It would be May last year when I took on this portfolio. Anything I'm particularly proud of? All of it.
You can't pick anything out in particular?
I think what can I think of in particular? The A4, HMO, the Article 4.
Yep.
Glad that we've got that through. The housing strategy which is coming up. Also, we got a really good audit report, didn't we, for the DFG grants, which was really encouraging. Yeah, but yeah.
Just to clarify to members of the public, A4 is about
Article 4 directive, which is which means that anybody that wants to open a home for 2 or 3 people who are not related, they must go for planning permission now, whereas before they did not need to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just wanted some clarity of acronyms.
Thank you.
The word expediently is used throughout the report, and it was used throughout planning anyway. Does this have a particular statutory or formal planning meaning?
It's a term that's commonly used in terms of planning enforcement, but tends to be limited to that part of the world of planning. And it just means whether it's worth doing, essentially. Is it expedient to spend the resources? Are we going to get the right outcome out of whatever action we take? But it does tend to be limited to the planning enforcement world.
Yeah, I think we're coming back to that in some of our questioning. Councillor Bollenberg. Oh, have I got... No, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Ashton.
Yes, so your portfolio cuts across 2 council directorates. And how do you ensure linkages are made and that there is effective joint working where it's needed within this crossover?
The executive member briefings, which we have usually once a month, so the various directors we'll all sit together and go through and link up.
Does that mean that councillors who share the same access, who cover parts of the same directorate, actually talk together about what's going on in that directorate?
I think they talk. They have different. Are you talking about councillors, or are you talking about?
I'm talking about the cabinet members, the members of the council who hold cabinet positions, who overlap different directorates. So you and yourself and another member of cabinet might have overlapping responsibilities of a single directorate. Is there coordination?
Yeah, we'll do that through leaders' brief.
Thank you.
Twice a month.
And how often does leaders' brief occur?
Twice a month.
Twice a month, sorry. Thank you. I need to ask the gentleman on the desk if I could have a Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Good evening, Councillor Sharples, Gail and Jennifer. Thanks for coming this evening. Can I ask you some questions about the local plan, which you did reference? Now, you will have heard some of these comments and queries before, but a number of members have commented that ward councillors have not been very engaged in the development of this local plan, particularly if you compare it with the last local plan, which was done where the level of involvement was much greater. Please could you talk us through, as the cabinet member, how you have involved ward members?
I can't, I'm afraid, but I can ask. Officer.
Yeah, certainly. So I think for the past couple of years, and I'm only talking about that because that's how long I've been with the councils for, anytime any member has wanted to come and talk to the officers about local plans, we've made ourselves available, and we've also done a number of briefings for the relevant groups as well, which Councillor Sharples has been in attendance of, depending on his availability. So we have reached out to each of the groups to have those discussions, and I believe I'm right in saying that before we got to... Sorry, the local plan is a long process, so I have to cast my mind back. We did do an all-member briefing in relation to the publication version of the local plan before it came to council in January of 2025. Would you like me to talk about plans going forward, or is that sufficient as an answer for now?
It's sufficient as an answer because I don't think the criticism isn't directed towards officers, because I think that is a fair comment, and I'll certainly, when I've asked for a meeting, that meeting has been held, or with other colleagues, etc., etc. But it's just not been as engaging as we've seen. I've been here a long time, so I've seen various local plans coming forward, and no doubt there'll be another one coming around the corner. But it's what we can learn from that, because last time there's very much greater engagement of local members, which can be, yeah, it's time consuming at times, but nevertheless it was very helpful in terms of bringing sites forward, looking at sites which could be brought forward, sites which had some challenges but could be brought forward if certain improvements were put in place, and gathering that local knowledge very much on the ground in terms of communities which any of the colleagues on the committee tonight or the other 45 members of the council would have knowledge of from their area. And that was the view regarding it. So, I mean, that is looking backwards, but looking forwards, how can we learn from this local plan in terms of future editions of the local plan moving forward? And also, can I also ask you, the other point is that there's a reference in the action points to regular updates being circulated to all members regarding the local plan. I've got to say, I don't remember many updates in the last 6 months. And other colleagues have commented along similar lines, and there just seems to be something of a void. And I think it's important that we do keep in contact with this. It's an important issue which affects individual communities, but South Wales as a whole moving forward.
In view of the fact that we've had the report back from the inspectorate, have I got the right term? Inspectorate, yeah. I hope there would be a briefing document to the members on what the conclusions of that is and what actions the council will need to be taking in light of that. As an opportunity rather than... Can I ask a subsidiary question on this one?
Can I just come back on Councillor Green?
Yes, sorry.
In terms of ward engagement, ward members' engagement, because of the technical nature of the local plan and as it's progressing, I would have directed the to deal with that. In terms of the updates, I'm aware of two. I'm aware of two emails that have gone out to all members regarding updates, but we'll get another update out as soon as we have more information. It's at that stage now where we've got information back from the inspectors that we have to act on, and when we've got that part of it done, then there'll be another update. Sorry, what was the other question?
Well, I was going to say I would hope we get an update before that you've discussed on the acting on. We could do with a report on what the on what the inspectorate has said. Just how being aware that one of the major risk or opportunity areas for the council is local government reform. How does, I mean, we won't have an answer for this yet, I'm sure, but I hope that we have some thinking going on about how this local plan might mesh with the needs of a future council. Would that be part of your work plan?
It's an issue that we have discussed. There's a lot of uncertainty, isn't there? Yeah. But would you like to comment? Yeah.
Just to say, I'm smiling because it is an issue that we've discussed, and I think the most important thing is on day one of any new authority, what is the housing requirement? Yeah. And therefore, does it have a 5-year housing land supply or not? And if I'm honest, that isn't something we've got guidance from national government on, but it is something that we are actively seeking an answer to as quickly as possible, because it will be critical for that new authority. So yeah, we're very mindful of that, because this local plan has taken us, I think, 6 years to get to the point now. By the end of the year, we will hopefully have an adopted local plan, and the last thing anybody wants is that the weight of that is diminished because of another process that is happening.
Yes. The present plans for local government reform would include West Lancashire with this borough and the bits of the and Chorley and the bits of the county council. Do we know where their local plan, because Chorley is already in, do we know where their local plan is?
I know that they haven't got an up-to-date local plan, and they are thinking about producing one, but the government is also changing the whole plan-making process as well. So it is something, I mean, it is something we are in discussions with, because of it, obviously in not too long a future, the conversation might be about a different geography and start planning on a different geography. So they are currently behind us and without an up-to-date local plan.
Yeah, Thank you for the assurance that I wanted to get from you that this is on the agenda, because it is a major item, of course. I doubt that it could possibly not be on the agenda, but it's nice to have the assurance that it is. Councillor King.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, have you got... Sorry, Councillor Green.
If I may come back and just come back to Councillor Sharples, because I just want to push this point about what can we learn from the current local plan and how we've dealt with it in terms of a future iteration of the local plan. I mean, last time we had a cross-party member working group that looked at the local plan in detail. Decision was taken this time, not by you, I hasten to add, you weren't the portfolio holder, and not even by your leader, Councillor Tomlinson, who sat behind you, by a previous leader of this council, took a decision not to have a cross-party working group, which was a really serious backward step for this council. What lessons have we learned from that, and would we do something differently next time, if it was in your gift?
I'm not really sure it's in my gift. I mean, I'm moving forward. I'm looking at what we're doing today. I take your point about we did it differently before. We are where we are now, and you've got LGR on the horizon. So, I mean, well, I'm not really sure what it is you're expecting us to do, or what is it you want, because what are we learning from? And then it's going to change again. So, I really don't know what I can say, how I can answer your question. I appreciate what you're saying, that you did it differently before, and but I'm just working in the present. We're progressing with the local plan. We're at a stage where we've got some responses from the inspectorate which we have to deal with, and that's where I am. We're just moving forward to a point where we can come along and say, this is where we are, this is and we'll update everyone. At the moment, that's all I can say.
Thank you, Councillor Sharples. I think maybe that this is a matter for scrutiny, that once the local plan is completed and signed off, we might, as a scrutiny committee, look at the lessons that might be learned in cooperation with yourselves. I think that may be the way forward on that. Councillor King.
On page 23, we've got your list of portfolio achievements, and you've written quite a list. What role have you personally played in achieving them?
Worked with officers, read briefings, had discussions, put my points forward, agreed things, asked for changes. That's my role.
Okay. On point number 1 of your portfolio achievements, then it says on there, it makes reference to one of the achievements being no greenbelt release. But there was an agreement made in last year or so, which was to allow Chorley to use some of their housing numbers to build in South Ribble instead. Inevitably, it will have brought forward the date of which we would need to release land in South Ribble in terms of greenbelt land. Do you know when that is most likely to happen following that decision?
I do not, but Gail may.
We always have to do, where you've got land that is greenbelt, you always have to do a greenbelt review anyway, as part of a local plan. And the other element to consider is what the national planning policy is saying. So we've got the new category definition of grey belt as well. So they are things that we will have to look at in relation to the next local plan. The other element to add in is that the housing, I mean, it says here we're planning for 80% of the standard method housing. The next time we do a plan, we're likely to have to plan for 100% of housing, and that will involve us looking at land that is designated greenbelt and grey belt. I do speak with caution though, because I've already mentioned changes to plan making reform. You know, there's almost everything that could possibly be up in the air around local planning at the moment is up in the air as well. So I would anticipate us continuing to need to look at whether we need to release greenbelt in the future, but I couldn't hand on heart give you a timescale for that today.
And the rationale that was put forward at the time to use land in South Ribble rather than Chorley's house in stock being built in Chorley was that they didn't have much land available outside of the green belt. Was there any agreement made with Chorley that as and when we get into that position, they would return the favour?
Not explicitly in that phrasing, but one of the things that you have to do as part of any local plan is what they call the duty to cooperate. So essentially one of the benefits of South Ribble taking the approach it has done is it is more likely to get a plan that has been that will be approved, because if it didn't do what it had done, you're likely to get Chorley Council objecting to the plan all the way through the examination, and there will be a question to answer as to why South Ribble didn't take any of Chorley's unmet need, with that being sort of a known fact. So without using the word expedient, sorry, Councillor Pillinger, I think it was the expedient choice decision to have made to kind of preempt that. And therefore that helps South Ribble get a plan through that is then found sound and moving forward. I don't think there's been, as I said, a kind of reciprocal arrangement that's been made, but equally the same would apply. It's not going to be Chorley Council, probably the next body that is going to be adopting the next local plan is not going to be Chorley Council. But whatever that body is, it will need to look at its neighbours, and it will be the right thing to do at that point to think, well, actually it is within our gift to accept some of the need that may arise at that point from what is currently South Ribble Borough, if that makes sense. So nothing explicit, but the logic will still apply to future plan making.
Councillor Bollenberg.
Thank you, Chair. We remain on page 23 in the portfolio achievement section. On the second bullet point, you mention the improvements to the process of collecting SIL money, and you quote there 2.1 million. What lessons have we learnt from previous failures to collect the SIL money, and are you aware of any issues either outstanding or new within that process?
I know there's been a number of changes as a result of that, and I'll ask Gail to explain.
So one of the things that emerged a couple of years ago was around miscalculation in terms of the process of SIL, and it was an audit action, and I believe that audit report has been to scrutiny as well. So that is something that has been addressed. New processes have been put in place to make sure that can't happen again. I think the other thing, the lesson that we've learned is around investing in the team. As you can see there, there's quite a lot of money involved. So actually it pays for us, and I would say this as an officer, pays for us to invest in that team to make sure that we have got the right number of people, so this doesn't fall on one pair of shoulders. So that team, as it says, has been restructured. This is also the team that looks at any money that comes through from Section 106s as well. So we're able to take, and again, a little bit more about the next item on the agenda, we're able to take a bit more of a proactive approach in terms of when that money is due and when that's coming forward. So I think one was straightforward in terms of the processes, do we know what we're calculating? And then the second one is actually making sure we recognise the importance of that team.
Thank you very much. So are there any issues that you're aware of, either outstanding or you need more resources for, or anything new on the horizon?
End of city deal, possibly, and the fact that we need to think about it ourselves.
Yeah, and end of city deal, which is what, 18 months or so?
Yeah.
Yeah, then we need to start thinking about what we're doing it all ourselves. So we're not aware of anything otherwise.
Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Just to pick up on the whole issue of empty homes, and it's down as an achievement that you've maintained proactive work, which is great. But then in the areas for development, recognising that it's still not actually achieved what we wanted to achieve, and I suppose where next really, what are the next priorities in terms of actually starting to address this issue?
It's a tricky one. Really is a tricky one. How can we convince people who have empty homes to put people in them? There's nervousness around the new rules that are coming out. I'm not 100% sure why. I mean, I think the incentive So it's about £4,300. It's a reasonably attentive, but they're just nervous. And I don't really know the answer. I wonder if Jennifer has a few thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. It is a really difficult one. We're looking at to see if any of the housing associations wants to support us to look at maybe supporting the new landlords, whether they would manage the properties on their behalf, whether that would encourage them to maybe open these empty homes up. A lot of them are in probate, and that takes a long time, and it's up to us to make sure that the properties stay in a good condition so they're not affecting neighbours, and obviously working with the statutory environmental health officers. But for people who want to keep homes for investment, then it's for us to encourage and try and maybe help with managing the properties and working with the housing associations to see whether they'd set up some scheme to manage the properties on their behalf.
Do you have any feel for in terms of numbers, the numbers where people are sitting on them thinking maybe they've bought it as an investment opportunity and then just left it because of nervousness? Because obviously the probate is a different issue and it takes a long time, as I know personally. But
It's low numbers. We're talking about probably, maybe 20 to 30. So we do write to them every year. So and we do inspect empty properties every year. And we do work with them to try and say there's grants out there, and then hopefully we can try and get maybe some management arrangements. But we're not talking huge numbers, even though there is a large number on the list. Most of them are in probate, or they've just abandoned them. Some people have, yeah.
okay, thank you.
On the question of probate, while I realise registration of deaths will be at the county council level, does the citizens' advice that we host offer any advice to people? I know that what happens with probate is that families are overwhelmed with the fact of the bereavement to begin with, but they also mostly have never dealt with this sort of thing before, and then they may put it in the hand of solicitors, and to the best will in the world, most solicitors don't give it a high priority. So it comes in, it goes onto a pile that's dealt with, and it might be several weeks between things. Does the citizens' advice give advice on that end, on probate and such things?
Yeah, they can give advice. They are trained. They've got legal people who are trained, if needs be, to support through. I think there's also advice and bereavement service advice as well. So there is a couple of avenues we can send people down if they are concerned about it. And they do provide some free legal advice.
So might we have any signposting on our website or anything like that about... I'm just trying to think how we can possibly free up this logjam, because it's difficult for the families themselves and it's empty houses. So I'd be interested to have some ideas at some point, or even for you to put out to the members of the council. Yeah, have you got any ideas on how we can unblock this logjam? But that's not a question; it's more a suggestion. Thank you. One final. Oh, sorry, no, Councillor Michael Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I take you on to page 26, towards the bottom of that, and we're talking about adaptations to properties, etc. I'm pleased to see that progress seems to be positive, but can I ask how long referrals wait before the adaptation actually takes place?
It very, very much depends. So if it's a stair lift, it can be a matter of a month. It's very, very quick because we've got an agreement with the contractor. As soon as we get that in, it's out. If it is a wet room, it can take probably about maybe 4 months. It's pretty quick. If it is an extension that requires planning permission, that can take a long while because we have to go through planning, we have to get building control on board. So that can be upwards of 6 months. So it depends. With the minor adaptations, that's going to be very different. So that will be starting on the 1st of April. So depending on advice from the occupational health, they'll set them into categories. So some priority categories will be 72 hours to get the adaptation in, and some will take a couple of weeks. So again, it very much depends. So the occupational therapists in Lancashire County Council will set priorities for cases, so some that would be urgent and then some which would be less urgent. So we follow their advice and guidance and set accordingly.
Yeah, thank you for that. And certainly previously one of the major bottlenecks was the availability of occupational therapists. What's the current situation in that regard?
It's very good at the moment from Lancashire County Council. They're getting through the list pretty quickly. Again, depending on complexity, how long they would be on the list. Particularly children's cases would need a specific children's therapist to go out and assess. So that can take a little bit longer, but we've not got the backlog that we used to have, and cases are coming in through quite frequently now. So they did quite a lot of recruitment of their occupational therapy team. So the backlog isn't huge now.
And lastly, if you had a magic wand, wouldn't it be wonderful? Is there anything you'd like to see relevant to your portfolio?
Make us disappear.
More money for affordable housing. I think that's a key one. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Are there any members, any questions from members not on the committee that those would need to be on Teams because none are physically? Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. This may be the wrong time and we might not have the answer, so I'm quite happy to accept a written answer. But as your portfolio covers licensing, and we do see quite an influx of licensed vehicles from other areas, especially Wolverhampton. I know that there was some effort put into to try and regulate these here by inviting licensing colleagues from Wolverhampton to come up, and I know other areas have a lot of trouble doing that as well, probably because there's not enough of them to do it for the amount of taxis they license. So just wondering, are we moving in any direction to try and control this in any further way? Have we had support from the MPs, the two MPs that represent sort of South Ribble area? And if there's anything else we can do as councillors and what we can pass on to residents to try and report these infractions, because currently we have a 2-tier, 3-tier, 4-tier licensed vehicles of various degrees, where I know that some have been licensed elsewhere that wouldn't be licensed here. So it's just, I say, you can't, I'm not after an answer right now, but it's just something to think about. Thank you.
So you're actually asking a question about what might be termed Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think this is a matter that's on our. We've asked a number of questions in the past, and I think something that is on the agenda. Do you have any comments?
I don't think there's probably not a lot we can do locally, but any ideas, Gail?
A couple of things that you have done. So the vehicle age policy that came to council recently was about looking at making sure our policies aren't too, I'm going to use the word draconian, but are fit and proper, but don't actually push people from becoming licensed with South Ribble and push them into a situation where going to the likes of Sefton or Wolverhampton is easier and better for them to, or easier and quicker to do so. So I think we have looked at our policies to make sure that they still are fit for purpose, with that recognising that balance. The other thing, and I think the point that Councillor Martin is making, is around the promotion of those local firms, to make sure that people are aware that they have to have MOTs done more regularly if they're licensed through us. The DBS checks are done more frequently here than elsewhere. So the quality both of the standard of the driver and also the vehicle that you're in. And then, as Councillor Sharples mentioned in his introduction, that gold standard of licensing, that's essentially a promotional, a branding that we are moving towards doing, which says, you know, come to us and use us. So the residents would use us, visitors would use those companies that are licensed by our own team, as opposed to using alternatives, shall I say. So I think there are things that we can do. There's the legal kind of loophole that is probably outside of our control directly, but I do know that there has been some lobbying by both MPs locally, but also by officers as well. There's a consultation that's out at the moment about where the future of taxi licensing will end up. So it is something that we are, you know, very mindful of. But I think the one thing we can focus on is the quality of the standard that is received by people that are licensed by this authority.
Have you had any communication with the large international firm that tends to use Wolverhampton rather than any other? And it's true of them across the country that one large international firm uses Wolverhampton in preference. I wonder whether we've made any contact with them to ask them why.
Not aware of anything, but I might add that the MP Paul Foster has raised it a few times, the Department of Transport, and our licensing officers have gone to a Pan-Lancashire meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner on this issue, so there might be something in the pipeline.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is just on the back of a question or questions from Councillor Green with regard to councillors' engagement within the local plan. I know as a group we found there wasn't any council engagement. We had a local plan working group which started in 2020 and then was cancelled at the end of November 2022. And in spite of asking on 2 occasions at council meetings if this group could be reconstituted, because we found it very, very helpful and we could have contributed more to the meetings itself.
Can I just ask you whether there's a question here or whether you're just wanting to make a comment?
Well, I will ask a question then, Chair. It is just a comment and it's on the back of what's been said. In view of what I have just been said and on what's been said by one of the members on the committee, would the cabinet member reconstitute this group as and when necessary, and would he when his duty to cooperate with all the members of the council? Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Councillor. We have already covered this. I don't think there's any more I can say, really. There was an all-member briefing, and there has been a consultation period. But we can maybe think about it when we look at the next local plan.
Thank you. We have no members of the public inside the building. Are there any online? Nobody is wanting to ask questions. So we'll move on to formulating our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from tonight's discussion that the committee might like to consider recommending. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Directors for attending and answering questions. The committee welcomes the report and commends the work of the Cabinet Member and his teams. The committee is grateful to the Cabinet Member for agreeing to provide updates on the local plan moving forward. The committee would like to review any lessons learned from member engagement in the development of the local plan in the future. And finally, the committee suggests signposting information on probate on the council's website to try to assist with bringing empty properties back into use. Thank you, Chair.
Are we content with those recommendations? Oh, yes.
Can I ask a query?
Sorry, that's a question, sorry.
Yeah, I am content with them. Can I just query the one about the lessons learned from member engagement? It's from member engagement or lack of member engagement, or was it sufficient? I mean, we can word it as softly as we wish, but it needs to look at, was the member engagement sufficient to support the local plan process?
I think we will note your comment. Everybody else happy? Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. We can now release you. You can sit in the back for the rest of the meeting if you wish to. Oh, you're still here, aren't you? Yes.
For the next two.
So we've done the introductions at the beginning of the meeting and the people here haven't changed. So can I just ask you if you have any initial words of introduction? Councillor Sharples.
Yep, the report is at page 29. I'm not going to read all that, obviously, but I do have some key headlines. I will say this, I was saying earlier on about how things crop up in this portfolio, and until they crop up, you don't know the first thing about them. This one only cropped up recently, but it's quite an interesting one. Some key headlines on the planning enforcement. Strengthened shared service model. In June 2025, we established a shared compliance team across South Ribble and Chorley, bringing planning enforcement, SIL and 106 monitoring into one integrated service. And that has increased resilience, consistency and capacity, reducing reliance on external support. Improved monitoring of the pre-commencement conditions. All pre-commencement conditions for new permissions are now recorded in Exicom, which is software I believe, and systematically monitored. Cross-checking with SIL and S106 commencement notices means potential breaches are identified earlier and passed quickly to enforcement officers. More efficient, intelligence-led enforcement. Regular site monitoring by SIL 106 officers every 3 to 6 months. Now feeds directly into enforcement activity. This gives earlier visibility of development activity and supports faster intervention where it's needed. We've got a triage system, a clear triage system now. A new red, amber, green framework which prioritises cases based on risk and planning harm is being introduced. So, for example, red cases, listed buildings, TPO trees, clear legal issues. They receive immediate attention, and amber cases within 10 days, green within 20 days, which I think is encouraging improvement. This ensures resources are deployed where harm is greatest, improving fairness and transparency. Proportionate evidence-based enforcement. National policy requires enforcement action only when it is expedient, that word's cropped up again, and in the public interest. The updated enforcement plan reinforces that decisions must be proportionate, transparent and focused on planning harm. Many issues can be resolved informally or through negotiation, avoiding unnecessary formal action. Stronger governance and legal collaboration. Shared service arrangements have embedded routine communications within legal services and development management. This aligns well with recent Ombudsman expectations on early legal advice and robust decision making. And better communication with the public and developers. Work is underway to improve public guidance, manage expectations and make reporting breaches clearer. We are committed to keeping complainants updated at key stages within legal constraints. Performance and future development. New performance indicators are being developed, including response times by triage level and monitoring of pre-commencement conditions. Focus remains on continuous improvement, transparency and supporting member oversight. The overall assurance message: the shared service has strengthened enforcement capacity, compliance monitoring and early indication of planning harm. Processes are now more consistent, defensible and aligned with national guidance, giving scrutiny clear assurance that planning enforcement is being delivered effectively and proportionately. And with that, I'll take questions, probably pass them on.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ashton.
Yeah, it was just something that I was unclear about when I was reading the report, and just want to be sure that I'm getting hold of the right end of the stick. When we're talking about shared services, in general, we use that to mean a shared service between the two councils. But then we've also brought together two functions that weren't. So is it the functions and the teams that are now brought together in the shared service, as it were? So everything's together now.
Shared on both aspects.
Thank you.
Thank you. On page 32, paragraph 18, which is at the top of the page, How many members of staff are in the shared compliance team, and on average, how many of these will be working on South Ribble cases at any one time? And how does the team distribute work and resources to ensure that each council receives the necessary enforcement support?
This is one I do not know, but I can tell you someone who does.
So it's a bit complicated because of different people's roles. We had 4 people in the team beforehand. We now have 8. And then 4 that would specifically be focused on South Ribble. So essentially 2 for what we call planning compliance. Well, interchanged the terminology, apologies, but essentially 2 for dealing with SIL and Section 106, and then 2 dealing for enforcement cases. But the beauty of the sharing across the 2 councils is that the work streams can flow, so they are managed, and I should say there's a manager on top of that as well. That the work can flow where it needs to be, and also both teams are embedded within the wider planning team. So obviously you can imagine that the case officers that are dealing with an application, particularly if it's a retrospective application to regularise a breach of planning, they will be involved as well in that planning case. So it's not quite as straightforward, but we have easily doubled the number of people that are now looking at the SIL, Section 106 and enforcement cases, if that answers the question.
I think it does. I mean, obviously the managing of that is a more complex task than it was before, but which we hope will be managed adequately. But I can certainly see the resilience that comes out of the larger team, and it looks good to me. It's one of the things I looked at the report. So it was good to be able to say to our officers and our cabinet members, this looks like a really good thing. And thank you for the work that's gone in to bring this about, because it's clearly more resilient than we were previously, and is a better way of working, I think. So thank you for that, and we want to make that a note, or put that on record, that this is something that is strikingly a good idea. Councillor King.
Could you tell the committee how many enforcement cases the team deal with each year?
We can't offhand, but we can find out for you.
Okay, that's fine. And then just to follow on from that one, how long do you think is reasonable for the enforcement team to visit a site once an enforcement issue is reported?
I'll let Gail answer that in a minute, but I just had a message come through. The answer to your first question is 240.
And then in terms of reasonableness, I think paragraphs 29, 30 and 31 set out the proposals in relation to the triage. And the range of issues that the planning enforcement team are dealing with could be relatively small but impactful to major and of immediate response. So what it talks about there is that the red cases will be investigated on the same day or the next working day, and gives you some examples there. So demolition of listed buildings, and then felling of protected trees. Those are ones that, because of the legal requirements to move quickly, the intention is to move very quickly. And then some of the other, so for amber cases, they will be responded to within 10 working days. That's probably the majority of them. And then green cases within a 20-day response time. So that's the timetable that's been set out in relation to the visiting of the site. In most instances, they will be quicker than that. And again, I mentioned before about the embedding of the team is within that wider planning team. So you'll also have case officers that are travelling around the borough and can take a look at something as well. But that's what we've set out in terms of our sort of minimum standards for going and responding to cases.
Based on the timelines set out, then could you tell us a little bit more of the success rate of going and visiting these sites? Just because a grand example is one that I sent an email on the 23rd about tree felling and dumping on a site that had previously just gone to a planning meeting, that was set out on the 23rd, at this point, there's still no outcome that has come from that. And I highly doubt they're still sat there right now dumping, and therefore, how are we likely to catch the people who are responsible for it? So how is it that the timeline set out can actually achieve success?
So these are new timelines that the new team is putting in place. So in terms of any data that we've got, I can absolutely get a report for the Scrutiny Committee in relation to that, but it won't talk about red, amber and green cases because that's a new kind of triage system moving forward. And then I think where we get to with cases, and this is the same for members or members of the public, after the initial visit, it often goes into discussions with whoever is the person that's done the work that they shouldn't have done, and then it goes into discussions with them and negotiations. It's very difficult for us then to reveal information to a third party. So it could look as though nothing is happening, but it could be that something is happening and those discussions are happening about. Oftentimes the response is that a planning application will put in to regularise that, and that in itself takes time. So if they say that on day one, after the case officer has visited, there is a reasonable amount of time that they need to allow for that application to come in before any further action can be taken. So it looks as though nothing's happening. And we will always get information, whether it's from members or whether it's members of the public. If you want to know where your case is up to, then we can provide as much information as possible. But often, like I say, it's quite difficult to reveal it because sometimes we can be revealing information about sensitive or commercially sensitive information. But I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation about that case in particular and get you an update on it.
Thank you. And based off that new traffic light system, do you feel that you've got sufficient capacity and resource to ensure that those planning conditions are met and that effective enforcement does take place?
I think the report talks about introducing new metrics into that. So that's the team are going through a process of business planning at the moment. So what we want to do is introduce those new metrics so we can absolutely get more confidence around that. But I mean, I'm confident that by essentially doubling the members of staff and also setting out this triage, we are in a better position than we have been in. What we would all like to see is some facts and figures that back that up as well.
Could I ask, just from the back of this, whether we're able to get some information on what the response rates have been so far? I appreciate that there's this new traffic light system and we're able to kind of divvy this out, but what has been the rate so far? That would be really helpful to see.
I think that's a request for information rather than a question that needs answering. Councillor Bollenberg.
So my question relates to the compliance team. Do they proactively check on planning developments to ensure they are following conditions, or do they rely on members and maybe members of the public raising issues?
Item 42.
Yeah, paragraph 42 talks about... Sorry, go on, Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, sorry. Item 42 on page 35. Proactive monitoring using SIL and SO1 6 data you'll find in that paragraph there. Yeah? Do you want to read it? Or?
No. Not entirely sure that does answer the question though. And it may be just my reading of that, but I'm actually asking, do they proactively check these sites?
In terms of discharge of conditions, or in terms of conditions monitoring? Condition monitoring.
Can I just, before you answer that, ask whether building control and planning enforcement are regularly in contact with one another as well? Is that a means of adding even more resilience to the process?
That's sort of the point, and I think the point of those paragraphs in 47, 48 is around using what are the knowledge that we've got within the organisation. So whether it's those people that are visiting sites because of SIL and Section 106, obligations, or whether it's the case officers that are going to the site next door, or whether it's indeed building control as well. What we're moving to a position is that we're all a little bit smarter about the information that we've got in relation to what development is actually happening on the ground. So we're moving to a much better position of trying to link all that information together as well.
Thank you. I think we'll probably have to come back to that at some point then and see how that ongoing work is progressing. Because I do notice from 48 something that Councillor King asked about the response times and triage category numbers is covered in 48 as another ongoing work in progress.
Thank you. Councillor Green. Sorry, it's you again. No.
So to move back from page 36, where we just worked back to page 33, paragraph 24. So I'll move a bit nearer the mic. I'm aware that I keep moving out of range. Reference is made to the sill sites being monitored by way of a spreadsheet. And actually, when you read it, it seems to indicate multiple separate spreadsheets. The committee are just interested if you've done any assessment of potential weaknesses and risks with using spreadsheets, and also we'll be interested in how you work to ensure data quality and whether or not one system had been considered.
There is a wonderful system called Exicom, which is referenced in paragraph 23, which was actually set up by somebody who used to do Section 106 monitoring in local authorities, so knows exactly what's required. The team, we bought this probably about a year ago. So there's been a process of putting information into Exicom and getting it up to a position where it is fully utilised. The team have also gone through all the past historic Section 106s for about the last 10 years, putting those onto a spreadsheet for now, and then the idea is to move them into Exicom. So we know that the better system is the Exicom system rather than spreadsheets, because I think if you go back to the audit report, particularly around SIL, it's kind of where there was a bit of two different spreadsheets and different lists. So the intention is to move everything into Exicom as much as possible to hopefully minimise that purpose. It's just a period of time.
Is Exicon not able to deal with planning applications, developments that are not Section 106 or SIL? Because there's mention here of a separate spreadsheet for those.
I'd need to probably just double check and remember with there is a way that you can integrate your planning system with your Exicom system, so it isn't just linked to Section 106. But some of the problem is around those historic ones as well, but I can double check that information and come back to you.
Yeah, it's just the final sentence on paragraph 24 might reveal a weakness, which might need some work done on it at some point. Thank you.
Could I ask a supplementary?
Yes, Councillor.
Just to jump back to what you were saying about the aim is to move on to Exicom, yeah. Is there a deadline for that? Is there a date that you're working to? Your team will have that populated?
We haven't set out a date yet. I feel like that might come as a recommendation from the committee to do so. We have done a huge amount of work actually, and I think not underestimating the amount of work to go through. A lot of the Section 106s, I'm sure you'll be aware of them from your own casework. They're scanned in documents from a number of years ago. So to actually have gone through those and to put them into a spreadsheet is a huge piece of work. It is something that the team are very are keen to do.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I take you to page 34, paragraph 34, which refers to the National Planning Policy Framework setting out that enforcement action is discretionary. Please could, for the benefit of the committee and anybody else watching this meeting, could you provide some background to this and how the council would actually make a decision on whether to take action?
think it's back to the triage point. So it is discretionary. That's what the National Planning Policy says, which is where that point about expediency comes in, and then that helps to underline why we've set out that red, amber, and green. So the red really are the points where actually it isn't discretionary because there's going to be a protected tree that's felled through different pieces of legislation. So that has helped us shape our proposal and policy. Anything else, unfortunately, is discretionary and down to the council to make a decision. There is a lot of pressure, whether it's from, mainly from residents, neighbouring residents particularly, to make sure absolutely everything is done as that planning permission was granted. Sometimes it's not expedient to do so, and there might be a genuine reason why something was built in a slightly different way, which is where you get those changes to conditions or even retrospective applications. And some of it is that the planning system is very difficult for anybody to understand. You know, even people that have been in the field for a long time, things change quite a lot. So a lot of what we do deal with is where people have built an extension on their property, for example, and didn't realise the rules. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't enforce in those situations, but you know, that's often what we're up against, is genuine people not understanding the plethora of rules around the planning system. So it is difficult, and I think that's where you have to have the element of judgment that's introduced into whether it's the right thing to do and whether it will lead to an outcome that is actually, you know, beneficial for all that's involved.
Councillor Green. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Ashton. Apologies.
5 and 46, and welcome the commitment to communication. So I think I was querying really the more general stuff. So you've talked about the performance indicators and whether we know what they are yet and where they're going. And then the other side, I think, was all around the public expectations and how you communicate that, because I think a lot of members of the public really don't understand that you can only refuse the planning. You can only refuse planning on planning grounds. You can't just refuse it because somebody doesn't like it. And it's actually getting some of those messages across. And if you've given any thought to how you might do that bit.
In relation to... sorry, I'm just making sure the mic works. In relation to planning enforcement cases, everybody always wants us to do absolutely everything we possibly can on it because they think that their neighbour has done something wrong. Oftentimes you get involved in civil cases as well, unfortunately. The comms is difficult, and my answer to Councillor King was around sometimes it does get into when you're in the mix of actually understanding what the issue is, why they've done what they've done, how they're going to rectify that, actually giving their neighbour an update on some of that is not the right way to go about it. So oftentimes a lot of the complaints that I see is that people have put in an enforcement complaint and haven't heard anything, but when I check with the team, there is activity going on, it's just it hasn't reached that natural outcome. And often that natural outcome is a planning committee determining to approve or to refuse the application. I think your point is a wider point around planning in general, and that actually, as you say, you can only refuse planning applications on planning merit. I've been in the planning system for 25 or so years now. I don't think anybody's really cracked the nut as to how to explain that. It's very difficult. I think we do what we can do in terms of understanding and trying to explain that to people. The officers are always there to talk to members of the public, members of the council as well, to try and explain the whys and the wherefores. But unfortunately, it's often you're delivering bad news, aren't you? Difficult news, which sometimes people just don't like to hear. So I think we do what we can. I don't know whether there's much more we could put in terms of our website, for example, and being proactive about that, but I'm happy to have a look at it if the committee thinks it's worthwhile.
It's a long time since I've had a letter about a neighbour planning a change of planning. So I know you do write and you do communicate with them. Do those communication, I can't remember what they say, do they make it clear that there's only so far that that you can go, that you can't, where you can object about anything, but the chances of your objection being having any traction, they need to be around certain areas. Or do we just assume people will find that out for themselves through citizens' advice or wherever?
I'm happy to take an action to get the team to review the wording as well, because I do know that planning letters can often be quite legalistic as well and difficult for people to understand. And ultimately, you know, there's no third-party right of appeal in terms of any planning decisions that have been made in this planning regime. So it is difficult, but I will happily look at the wording and just see whether there's any changes that can be made to that.
Thank you for that assurance. We've had a lot of publicity recently about illegal waste sites. How would we know, and what would we do if the one at Wigan, for example, were shut properly, as it should have been some months ago, suddenly transferred all that into somewhere in South Ribble? How would we know?
That particular example crosses across quite a few regulatory regimes. So there's all sorts. I mean, ultimately, residents are the eyes and the ears. Yourselves are the eyes and the ears. So what this paper does talk about is actually how you can report where you think it is a breach of planning control, even if you're not sure about that. So the best thing to do is report it to us, and we will work it out between the teams, whether it's the waste team, whether it's the environmental health team, licensing team, for example. We will work out and we will investigate, and that is the best way to do it. That's why we have a link on our website and encourage people to use that to report things.
So does that public awareness of such things gives us an opportunity for comms to do something on that basis, to help people know that they can report things? What role do members have in planning compliance? Is there anything more that we as members can do? Is there any more that the team can do in liaising with members and providing training?
Report it. Things come to the planning committee, so yeah, decisions are made there. But what more can they do, really? Is there anything else? No.
Perhaps we can leave those as those particular questions as open questions for you to reflect on. Councillor Bollenberg.
I totally take your point, Councillor Sharple's report. It is obviously the first place, but I think listening to you, Gail, tonight has been really illuminating for the process and some of the things that happen behind the scenes. I think one of the newer members, I think members would really appreciate understanding that, because those are the nuances we need to communicate to residents in order to support the work of you and your team and the officers, who we as members want to support, but we also want to represent our ward residents. And it's a really difficult balance sometimes. And if we're not armed with the right arguments to say, well, actually, something is happening, and these are the general steps, and it can take this long, that kind of knowledge can often de-escalate situations, and I don't think I don't feel that I'm armed with that knowledge at the moment, and it would be really good to get some more insights into that, I think.
Thank you.
Member training? I think we've had some action on this, haven't we? In the past, we have member training.
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, so are you suggesting maybe put something out to all members, maybe, or?
Training would be great. I may well have missed it, or it may have been before my time. I've only been 18 months in the role. I can't always make training because of my job, but if it's on there, I will try and make it. It's one of the ones I think I'd find very, very useful. But if not, then maybe some. I also find talking points. You know, a deeper understanding of the system helps us when we're talking to residents.
I think it was last Thursday, the member training.
Are there any questions from members not on the committee? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Didn't expect this, did you? Again, I mean, it's on the hoof question. So, I mean, 4 years ago in Middlefirth, we had an application at the Champagne, and it was approved. And unfortunately, we found out that demolition is part of the process. So we sat and looked at a flat piece of rubble with weeds and things growing out of it for over 4 years. In the report, it sort of says that we're here to sort of try and promote a healthy and happy community and a green and clean neighbourhood. It's unfortunate that the developer doesn't have our sentiments there. So this is sort of on the enforcement side. So the perception, we live by perception. So what people think of us generally is the rules. Whereas with planning, it's a bit more clinical. But the perception is still there that this is offensive to the neighbourhood. Things should have been done better. There could have been hoarding. So the questions around that would be about whether there could be an undertaking during the planning process that a developer will respect the wishes of the community, even though they've probably upset them already, to try and sort of make it more of a pleasant experience and actually do what they said they're going to do within a reasonable time. The other thing we have now is all of a sudden we've got ironwork up now. They've decided to start. And as with other applications, we've seen that people didn't realise the actual volume of the development and how it would impinge on the skyline. And sort of like the Middlefirth one is looking like that. But as ordinary members of the council, we don't know whether it's in the right place or not, if it needs checking and sort of so wondered whether there was a capability for that to be happening when a development suddenly starts like that. For me, it needs to be checked, because to quickly rush in hoping get things done before anyone notices, it's just whether we can, how would we monitor that, or whether we just report it to you guys and you have a look yourselves.
Yeah, I do remember that. In fact, I was on planning when that Champagne one came through. I think there's lessons to be learned there, Gail. Any thoughts?
I think I would suggest that as members you report any, sorry, you're behind me, any report, any queries. I do take your point around how do you know what it should be like, if you know, because there's a lot of detail, isn't there, in relation to some of the planning. You know, you'll receive the weekly lists. Some of those weekly lists will, so those applications will include the retrospective applications as well. Case officers are there available to talk to you, but I'm aware that that's not ideal. I think the best thing to do is that if you or any of the residents have got concerns, then just to report it. The point you made around kind of developers sort of being actively engaged in the local community, there is an expectation for major applications that they do so. Often they don't, and often for smaller applications they don't as well. And going back to the conversations around the local plan, you know, the local plan is something that sets out our expectations for development, but unfortunately we don't tend to get much traction with local residents in terms of responses to that document, because there isn't an application on their street next door to them for them to be able to kind of tangibly understand what that's going to look like. So I think we as a council do what we can. I do wish there was more, you know, in terms of helping people to understand what's going to happen. These documents are not easy for people to understand, but yeah, just if there's a particular case, just come and talk to myself or case officers, and we'll do the best to get the information you need.
Can I just mention Jubilee Gardens as being a good example of how a developer can communicate with the local area should they wish to. And if you just get a whole load of hoardings up and building goes on and people have no idea what this might look like, clearly it creates, it's more likely to create negativity than having the sort of response that we had from the developer at Jubilee Gardens. And maybe we just need to be able to circulate to those making applications for small and medium size, saying, you know, this is a good idea. If you would like to consider the people in your area, it will do you no harm in terms of public perception and public acceptance. I see no more questions for members not on the committee. There are no members of the public here. Have we some recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from the discussion tonight. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Director for attending and answering questions. The committee commends the bringing together of the shared planning compliance team. The committee requests further information on the new compliance triage process, response rate so far, and progress in developing performance indicators. The committee is grateful for the offer of more information on the timescale for populating and developing the Exicom software system. And finally, the committee asks that communications be reviewed to help residents understand the process and manage expectations more. Thank you, Chair.
Is the committee happy with those recommendations? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I welcome... I was going to say, I welcome Councillor Sharples back with his third hat on, but others who are not relevant to this particular item on our agenda, thank you for your time, officers of the Council. So I'd like, this is item 7, Housing Strategy 2026 to 31 consultation, and I ask Colin Sharples, who is supported by Jennifer Mulling, Director of Communities and Leisure, if he would like to make some introductory comments.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is one I think is really close to my heart. The housing strategy, really difficult area for us, and we are doing the very best that we can. Housing remains one of the most significant factors influencing people's life chances. A safe, secure and well-designed home can shape health, stability, opportunity and well-being. Here in South Ribble, we recognise that the challenges around access to affordable and suitable housing are not unique to us, but we are determined to take action wherever we can to meet local needs. And I think this strategy sets out a clear vision for how we will do that over the next 5 years. Locally, we face some really big challenges that are equally significant. House prices around 5 times average local income. A private rental market where many residents spend over 35% of their income on rent. A rising demand for social housing with over 2,000 applicants seeking affordable homes. Shortages of one-bedroom properties, which I think is particularly significant in this area. Worsening affordability and the pressures of homelessness, often linked to the cost of living. Section 21 evictions and complex personal circumstances. The growing needs of an ageing population and more residents living with disabilities. Despite these pressures, South Ribble has made strong progress, delivering 1,110 homes in the last 5 years, nearly half of which were affordable, and investing directly in new social and affordable housing at Tom Hanson House, Mackenzie Arms and Jubilee Gardens. But more is needed, and that is why this strategy is so important. Our commitments. The strategy is structured around 3 clear priorities. 1, delivering more affordable and social housing. 2, improving housing quality and sustainability. And 3, targeted support for our most vulnerable residents. This strategy is not one the Council can deliver alone. It relies on partnerships with registered providers, developers, health systems, voluntary organisations and our neighbouring authorities across central Lancashire. The forthcoming Central Lancashire Local Plan, now under examination, will be instrumental in shaping what we can deliver, setting the framework for sustainable, well-designed and affordable housing across the area. This strategy is ambitious, evidence-led and grounded in the reality facing residents today. It sets out a clear direction for how we as a council will respond to the growing pressures in the housing system, protect tenants and expand the supply of high-quality, genuinely affordable homes. It is a strategy built on a simple principle that everyone in South Ribble deserves a safe, secure and affordable place to call home. We've had already one part of the consultation. I think was it last Thursday or Friday? We had a housing summit where quite a few of our partners, yourself, came and joined us, and I thought that was really informative and helpful. The housing strategy consultation itself continues, I think, for another month. I think it's about another month. But it's one of those things where we are aware of the difficulties, and my view is we at South Ribble, with this strategy, are doing everything we possibly can. I welcome your comments and questions.
Thank you, Councillor Sharples. I would say that the Housing Summit, I was glad I I realised that it was on and decided to gate crash, because without it I gained a lot of knowledge of what is in this report to us that I wouldn't otherwise have had. Moving on to specifics, on page 40, paragraph 10, could you please talk us through the consultation process and particularly how you are targeting hard-to-reach groups?
Not sure how we're targeting the hard-to-reach groups. I'm sure Jennifer can help us with that. The process is we've had the summit.
Yeah.
Then there is a consultation which residents can fill in. That is online, or are we sending that out as well to some as well? Yeah, and after that we are doing what?
So we have, so we've had our housing summit with all our partner agencies, with probation, some of the police officers and others were there. We have got, as Councillor Sharple said, we've got 2,000 people on the waiting list. We will be able to send the link out to all those 2,000 on the waiting list, so they can, again, so most of them are vulnerable people who are on there, so we can send that out. We're also going to do some work with the housing association so they can get it out into their, they generally have communications with their tenants, so newsletters and others, we can get it out in the newsletters, and I'm trying to think what else we're doing. I think that's about it really, and it's on our website as well.
I don't know whether it's possible to let the members of the council have access to some of the material that was used at the summit, but I think that might be quite a useful thing. Councillor Bollenberg.
Thank you. I'm going to take you to, sorry, I seem to be whistling, page 41, paragraph 18, which is a part of the priority. It reflects the aspiration of the council to invest 1 million into new house building. How many units will, I've got a few questions, but I'll ask them rather than swamp. How many units will that 1 million provide?
No decision has been made yet on exactly how that money will be spent. There are a number of, so government has announced 39 billion, and yes, I did say billion. I'm very, you can see the pounds in my eyes, I'm excited about it, for affordable housing across the country. So the process is that we work up bids to put in for that funding, and then the potential is for that 1 million that we've set aside to kind of essentially work as match against that. But the pipeline work is ongoing at the moment to work out which sites and where we might be investing. So no decision has been made yet in terms of the specific number of units, but we're working on the detail.
And I'm going to slightly jump on a question that I know Councillor King's going to ask. What is the, but I think you're coming from a different angle, what is the government's definition of affordable in this?
So from a planning perspective, there are, I think, 8 parts of the definition of affordable, and it's set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. I'm not going to be able to remember all of those, but essentially affordable, well, there's either rented properties or what they call intermediate ownership, shared ownership properties. So from a rent perspective, affordable rent is 80% of the market rate. Social rent is 50% of the market rate. And then the shared ownership properties are things like intermediate home ownership, where you rent a bit of the house and you have a mortgage on that. So, and that can be various depending in terms of what mortgage availability you've got. But those figures of 80% and 50% are quite important. And then in relation to the level of need, we know that as market rates have gone up and up and up, the amount of people that actually still need a top-up assistance to get that to that 80% has increased, which is why from a planning perspective, our policy coming through the local plan prefers social rent. So both for our own developments, but also those that we're seeking through planning, we are looking to try and maximise the number of social rent products that come through, homes that come through. But as you can imagine, from a viability and a developer calculation perspective, that difference between 80% of the market rent and 50% is quite different.
Yeah, and so in housing, again, it's 80%. But as Gail said, because the rents are increasing quite significantly, particularly in South Ribble, the housing benefits aren't keeping up. So that means then top-ups have to be provided, and that's where people are running the risk of getting into significant housing debt. We do have support programs available. We will soon have a crisis resilience fund, but we also have housing support packages that we've got available that we have to work to make sure people can keep their homes rather than become homeless, and that's the work that we're doing with the prevention work.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting, and there's more I'd love to pick out of that. It was really interesting. But just to round off my question, you've mentioned that, that for that 1 million, we don't know how many new homes, because that work's still ongoing to scope that. As part of that, do you think we have the budget and resources that we need to deliver whatever we're going to deliver in that, or do you think more resources are needed?
I think 1 million is an excellent start. I think if we can use that to leverage as much as possible out of that 39 billion, then yes, we will do. We've got an excellent team in terms of delivering social housing products, as you can see from Jubilee Gardens mentioned earlier before. That was, you know, a project that we should be incredibly proud of as a council. We can always do more with more, but I think that we will do, you know, as much as possible with the resources that we've got at the moment, and we've got a significant appetite. I mean, this is both Jennifer and I are directorates. We've got, you know, a good group of people across working together under Councillor Sharples' portfolio that is really fixed on trying to. I think I've said crack this nut before in this evening, apologies, but try to do as much as we possibly can to deliver on this agenda.
Yeah, and we know we can't do this on our own. We have to work with our housing association partners, which we have got a partnership. It's a Select Move partnership where there's 14 housing associations and more wanting to join, which is a really good sign. And that's working with them to look at affordable, to look at development and work with our partners. So we can't do it alone as a local authority. We know that there's a gap in housing needs, so we have to work with them, which we've got a really good partnership, particularly with Progress Housing.
Councillor King, have we covered your question on affordability? Yeah. In which case, can I ask Councillor Sharples a question? Is 80% of market rent affordable? And that's a political question, not a...
Probably not. It is a political question.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I take you over the page onto page 42, paragraph 20? I'm talking about empty properties. So how will the reference to addressing empty properties differ from the current approach?
That's what I said before. It's working with partners to try and see if they would manage the properties on behalf of the owners. That's where we're hoping to be different, because people are put off because they don't want to be landlords, and that's what we're trying to see if we can develop a partnership with our housing associations to manage them on behalf of the owners. That's where we're hoping to develop.
Do you have any knowledge of other authorities that have done something similar?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Unique. It's nice to be unique. It'd be nice to be able to say South Ribble is at the forefront of doing something new. I wish you well. On Appendix A, draft housing strategy. Could you please talk us through the evidence base for the strategy?
So, you mean the evidence base for the whole strategy?
Yeah.
Oh,
Why
right,
have why
okay.
you know, where have we gone to get? Or what are we basing the strategy on?
Right, okay, so we're basing the strategy on lots and lots of different evidence that we've got. So we've got our evidence from Select Move, which is our list of people who want accommodation. So that's the 2,000 people. So the evidence have come from that. The evidence has come from National Picture of what it is. Evidence has also come from rents. We've also got evidence from Lancashire County Council about need, the ageing population, their support accommodation needs. We've got evidence from our housing associations. There's just lots and lots of different sources of evidence. We've got evidence from our housing teams about Section 21 notices. We've got evidence from our planning team as well. So lots of different, but I'm happy to list them out if you need them in a list, but you know, there is lots of it.
You're giving us a really good impression of the breadth of background to the knowledge that has come into this. Councillor Ashton. Microphone, please.
Sorry. Yes, so it's on page 7 of the housing strategy itself, which is page 51 in terms of the overall numbering. And it was just picking up on the references to the recommendations from the homelessness scrutiny review, and if there's been any developments of the thinking around things like the mentorship programme for first-time renters and one of the equity schemes. Where is there any, has there been any thought in terms of that yet?
So yes on the first one and no on the second one. So yes on mentoring. So we've started a floating support, we're calling it, for first time renters. Particularly where we're focusing on is those ones that have come through the homelessness team. So those ones that are particularly vulnerable. So that's a yes. Regarding equity schemes, not at the moment, but it's on the list.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor King.
If I can take you to page 53 on the overcrowding and under-occupancy, what more can we do to support people to downsize, and are there any incentives or support that we can provide?
So we're just working with Progress Housing at the moment. So we're working on a scheme which they will also be match funded to offer incentives, financial incentives for people to move if they're underoccupied. So we're working through that scheme at the moment. So it'll probably be around about £1,000 to support tenants who want to move, which will include help and support with moving costs and decoration. So we're working on that at the moment. So that should be coming through in the next couple of months.
You content? Content. So Councillor Bollenberg.
I'm remaining on page 53, the affording housing completions section. The committee were just wondering about future plans and timescales, because we can see that 2041, which seems an awful long way away, is mentioned, and we're just wondering what your plans and the timescales are around that.
Yeah, so we have to monitor our housing completions or completions of any development as part of the local plan. So as part of that, we'll do the affordable housing. So we typically do this every year. We do have a target that it refers to there. So we may be able to do it more frequently than that, but that's obviously a mix of both what's being granted permission through the system, but then also what's being delivered. And we have to understand that for multiple reasons, one of which is how long does it take to get from the granting of permission to the actual, people getting the keys and moving in. But that's something that the planning policy team does as part of the local plan monitoring.
Councillor Green.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. We've talked quite a bit about affordable properties, etc. And in terms of the strategy, what role will shared ownership products have? I mean, they're part of the mix. They are an affordable housing product. In terms of our new local plan policy, about 30% of 30% of affordable housing on major applications will be for shared ownership products. There are a range of them, but they remain a part of the affordable housing definition that the government sets out, and therefore it's one of the things that we've worked through, again, evidence-led, in terms of where the need is and what is the product that meets that need, and shared ownerships do make it part of that mix. So it's likely to be something that Jennifer talks about, our RPs delivering. It's most likely that those will be delivered via RPs as a shared ownership product.
Councillor Bollenberg.
Thank you. Just help me understand that part, and probably anybody watching as well. What do you mean by major? What's the definition of the criteria for major?
Apologies, 10 or more homes.
Thank you. Have you got the next question on your agenda, Councillor Bollenberg?
I was doing some maths in there, but I don't know. Yes, so how will the government proposal to relax the number of houses a council can own affect the plans for the future and the achievement of this strategy?
Yeah, we were delighted that the government changed the rules in relation to that housing revenue account. We're tracking underneath that at the moment, so there was already scope for us to build more, own more, manage more, but we're able to do that more freely now. So in discussions with Councillor Sharples and other cabinet members, that's something that we are hoping to progress, again linked to the bids into the government's 10-year plan for social and affordable housing programme.
Thank you. I was also delighted by that as well, although it falls into one of the categories of something that's very frustrating with the government's communications, in that it is a great thing, but it isn't. It will be a great thing when it comes in, and I'm just wondering, do you know when it might come in?
Do you know, I don't actually, because I don't think they have confirmed it. And I think the other thing to be mindful of is, we talked before about local government reorganisation, and I don't think they've clarified actually what the limit, it's currently it's 200 per each, but if the limit ups and we all suddenly buy and have more, then actually collectively we might end up being over the limit. I don't think that we've got clarity on that at the moment, but it's something that we are very aware of, and I'm sure that through the process of bidding into the social and affordable housing programme, we'll get some clarity fairly swiftly on that.
I think perhaps one of our recommendations might be to ask the Cabinet to see what they can be ascertained on questions like, if there are 3 boroughs coming together, what will the number be? Because the flat rates that we currently have of 200 going up to 1,000, when you've got different populated boroughs, sizes of populations and housing needs in boroughs, needs some clarification. So I think one of our conclusions for tonight may well be to ask the Cabinet if we can ask the government to do some work on that. Can I thank you for a good glossary on this report? My only comment would be that a reference to the glossary at the beginning of the report would enable somebody not to get to the end of the report before they realise it's there. This is a consultation. The committee has some questions that we would want to talk about, but we've finished with our questioning of yourselves. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you, Councillor Sharples and the officers concerned for being here for such a long time and answering the questions so helpfully. Thank you. We have recommendations, but we need those after the...
I can bring them all together if
Yeah,
that's preferred.
yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from tonight that the committee might like to recommend. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and directors for attending and answering questions. The committee welcomes the offer of sharing the resources from the recent Housing Summit and the draft strategy with all members of the Council. The committee requests more information on the government's announcement around increasing the number of council homes that may be owned in the future. And finally, the committee responds to the consultation that it commends the strategy, agrees with the priorities and their impact, suggests that the strategy includes in reference to the evidence base used and that the actions be reviewed to make sure they are smarter, that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-bound. Thank you, Chair.
Are members of the committee happy with those? Thank you very much. Sorry, I do note on my list that we should have asked if there are any questions, but I noted there were none on the screen coming up from those who are not here, and there's nobody else, unless Councillor Martin wanted to ask another question. No indication of other questions. So we need to move on and welcome another member of the Cabinet. We're grateful to Councillor Aniela Bilinski-Gelder for being here to item 8, the Cabinet Portfolio Update on Communities and Customers. And
Rob Heath and Alison Wilding.
yes, and for the officers, is it Rob Heath?
Rob Heath and Alison Wilding.
Right, Rob Heath and Alison Wilding, who are supporting her in her role on this. Do you have any introductory comments?
Chair, members of the committee, I feel privileged to have the single most important portfolio on the Cabinet, communities and customer. When I became a councillor, I stood because I wanted to make a positive difference to my community. And I'd like to explain why this portfolio is so important to me. Before I became political during the financial crisis in 2009, I was made redundant due to government austerity. I was at home with 2 children under school age and my husband suffered a 2-year pay freeze. We were in financial difficulty. When people say you shouldn't have children if you can't afford them, it makes no sense. People's lives and circumstances change all the time. I asked the Conservative-run council for support at the time, but there was nothing for me. In fact, nationally, George Osborne told me that thousands of women, told me and thousands of women staying at home to look after their children, that was a lifestyle choice. The previous Conservative administration here at South Ribble said they would not collect food in the Civic Centre for a food bank because it would make a mess of the foyer. The Labour administration has done everything it can since 2019 to ensure those families don't slip through the net in South Ribble like my family did back in 2009. Research demonstrates that most people dip into poverty 3 times in their lives: when they're children, when they have children, and when they retire. And this takes a toll on an individual's mental health, family breakdown, educational attainment, life expectancy, and even crime rates. I'm proud to sit here today and say in South Ribble over the last 6.5 years, we've created a huge safety net to protect, insulate and support our residents. And this is rooted in social justice, fairness and compassion. Our sense of we understand that community as a shared sense of service is a foundation for a strong society. We embed fairness into policy design, the Fair Tax Charter, Council Tax Support Scheme, taking the poorest out of paying council tax, social prescribing, youth participation, the school uniform bank, the food bank network, the community action network, those suffering forced migration and becoming a dementia-friendly borough. Community cohesion does not happen by chance. It requires sustained investment in people, places and relationships. This catalogue of support is a testament to all the Labour councillors in South Ribble. And finally, I'd like to finish on the most important point, and this is around democracy itself. Community cohesion and community investment are not simply desirable outcomes, but rather are fundamental to sustaining a healthy and functioning democracy. When everyone in the community feels connected, supported and heard, they have a genuine stake in the decision-making process. This strengthens democratic legitimacy. It builds trust, encourages participation not only in elections but in scrutiny, volunteering, co-design of services and everyday life. Where residents are not just passive recipients of policy but active contributors to shape society, everyone is safer, healthier and happier. As you will see, my portfolio is very broad and I will do my best to answer any questions and invite officers in where I need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bielinski-Gelder, for your outline of your lived experience, which drives your holding of both council, being a member of the council and of being a cabinet holder. What is the one thing, if you got one thing out of this, that you're proud of as leading, you're proud of leading as cabinet member with your portfolio?
I'm going to cheat a little bit here because I am proud of the long arc that all these different projects create for our community. So I suppose the thing I'm most proud of is the community that we now live in because of all the different projects, schemes and programmes that we've run since 2019.
Thank you. At Cabinet on Wednesday, there will be a response to the scrutiny review of resident engagement and democratic participation. We're grateful that you supported the review and the response. The response includes 4 of the recommendations being partially accepted. What is meant by partial, and are the recommendations accepted or not? Could clear responses be provided for Cabinet meeting on Wednesday?
You're going to maybe have to ask that question again. I'm not sure. Is it me as the portfolio holder that gets the sign-off of that scrutiny report, or is it the whole Cabinet?
It's the whole Cabinet,
Yeah.
but the area of the scrutiny report falls within your portfolio. I was wondering where you would personally feel about the partial acceptance.
To be honest with you, I have not had that brought to my attention. I would have to go away and look at those 4 items that you say are only partial. Previously on housing and things like that, any scrutiny that's come forward, I've accepted all of them. So I'm curious as to what they are. So I'll need to have a look at that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Ashton.
Yes, as with Councillor Sharples.
Could you use your microphone, please?
Yes, apologies. As with Councillor Sharples, your portfolio cuts across 2 directorates. And how do you ensure that the linkages are made, that there's effective joint working? Because I suppose to a degree, some of the functions of the 2 directorates are separate, but closely interrelated.
Thank you for that. With regular updates with officers, directors, but as you said, so the customer services element of it is where you get incoming contact from residents, and then the social prescribing is where you look at in more detail at residents' concerns and issues, but just regular updates with officers and and I ask for briefings with information about the number of calls coming in, the times it takes to answer them, the number of people coming in, number of requests coming in, referrals to social prescribing, and then just just analyse all the information that comes in and make decisions and speak to officers about how we could improve it and things like that.
So Councillor Shawholes was saying he actually had his briefings were done by the two directors together. Is yours done like that, or do you get the information and you piece it together in your head? And then
I get
that's
it.
where the questions are.
Sorry. I do get two different
Yes,
inputs. So I get it separately. But if I need to send an email to both at the same time about something, I will, or separately about separate issues.
Thank you, Councillor Bollenberg.
Can I take you to page 66, please? And it's the second bullet point down, supporting households and families. There's a line towards the end of the paragraph, of the bullet point, that says yes, should extend not only to those considered vulnerable, but also those who narrowly fall outside the eligibility for established support programmes. What the committee were wondering was, how are vulnerable families identified and encouraged to benefit from those programmes? But also, what is that that envelope that would capture those that are just falling outside the definition of vulnerable, and how wide is that that catchment area?
I think that it's probably better if the director answers this, but I will answer it more generally. We have a household support fund, and we've potentially got a new crisis fund as well. Those funds come with different definitions and parameters for what is considered, like you say, vulnerable, maybe low or high level and things like that. There are nationally recognised definitions for absolute poverty and relative poverty, and so I don't know if Jennifer can maybe explain how that fits in with this, but the funding always comes with the definition and the parameters set.
Yes, that's correct. They do. We've also got access to a database called the Low Income Family Tracker, where we can really get down to street level of gaps between affordability. So I don't know if you've been on some of the hub meetings, there's been some data to some of the community hubs with that information, and we can get down to really low levels. We can get down to people who haven't been claiming benefits they're entitled to. We can write to residents who we know that there is a gap between particular affordability on rent. So there's quite a lot of really rich data we can access and target our resources towards getting them to come in, approach us and work with our social prescribers.
Thank you. What I would like to just explore a bit further is that envelope beyond the definition of vulnerable. How far does it extend, and what working criteria have you got? Because wherever you draw the line, there are people beyond that. I'm just wondering what your catchment area is and what the rules, the internal criteria are.
Yeah, so again, obviously with our social prescribers, we're not exclusive. We wouldn't be, we wouldn't say that because they don't meet criteria that, they couldn't come to social prescribers. So with the social prescribers, working with people, we can look at the eligibility criteria. We're not, obviously some of our grants are very much set and they're very stringent on what comply with what's a crisis, what is eligible for housing support. But it may not be cash support they need, it may be signposting, it may be support services that we need. So we're not exclusive that way, so we can widen out. We may not be able to provide financial support because of strict criteria, but we may be able to work with a signposting, we may be able to look at what's out there in the voluntary sector. So some work that we do, particularly with white goods, and we have again supported families who may not comply with some of the grant conditions, and we do look at working outside the box within the parameters of the grant funding.
Thank you. I think that answers it beautifully. And And I think it links back to that wonderful introduction by Councillor Blinsky-Gelder. And I feel personally very proud to be representing a council and talking to my residents, knowing that the council has such a compassionate view on helping people. So thank you.
Councillor Ashton, you had a subsidiary question.
Yes, it was.
And you've got another question following.
It was. I haven't looked at the list. Oh, I have. It was about the. I suppose it's coming on from the lift data, and all of this is so multi-agency, and whether you're comfortable with the links with, for example, some of the housing providers, because a lot, obviously they are going to be coming into contact with a lot of these, and how those linkages work.
Yes, so we work with all the housing associations, as I said before already. They have also got their own fund for their tenants who need support. They have also been helping us with the household support fund, so Progress Housing have also been distributing the fund on our behalf, which is really good, as well as other agencies. So we've got a really good relationship. Particularly with housing costs, it's really good that we're working with the housing associations to make sure that if affordability is the issue, that they won't lose their home because of that. And the work that we're doing with housing benefits, the work that we're doing with the household support fund, and moving on to the crisis resilience fund, will make sure that people stay in their homes, because that's the last thing that we want, is for them to lose them.
Sorry. So you've mentioned Progress, and obviously they're a big presence in Middleford and Kingswold, but there are other housing associations active there as well. Is it equally good with most or all? Without mentioning names.
Yes, probably not. No. But we do regularly support them. We have regular meetings. We do say, make sure nobody goes in crisis, and we are there for them, and make sure that they are signposting them to ourselves and social prescribing and the benefits team. So we have those relationships, probably not as good, but the majority of social housing in South Ribble is Progress, but we do work with the other housing associations.
Thank you. Have you?
Yes, it's me again. So, Councillor Blinsky-Gelder, an impressive list of achievements, and like Councillor Bollenberg, I was very moved by her introductory speech. So, in terms of all those achievements, what role have you personally played in achieving them?
Thank you. I'm going to be honest. I have not played a role in every single one, and I am going to give a lot of credit to the officers here, because Jennifer will meet me regularly and come and brief me and say, we've got this fund and we want to do this with it, and this is what we're going to do, and that, and I'm like, do it. It's really good, and it adds to our list of things that we've done. But I am going to say that I have contributed to 3 specific things. One of them is obviously the community hubs. The model that exists now, the way that each hub is autonomous, the way that they make their own terms of reference, the way that they can make decisions. So, for example, in Western parishes, that is an all-conservative hub. They make their own decisions on everything they want. They've got their own budget, and they are free to decide what they want to do, what is best for their community, in that area specifically, and that is up to them. It's not something that is controlled from the centre, and the distribution of decision making and power has gone to the Western parishes, it's gone to Penwitham, and it's gone to each area like that. So that is one area. And just a quick update on that, I did meet with the chairs and vice chairs recently on the changes to the hub. And I think that this is for the better. It's progressing the hubs. It's asking them to get out into the communities, to consult the communities about what the communities want for their area. And it's also about tying back into the corporate strategy and the priorities of the council, because at the end of the day, the funding in the hubs is public money, and it does have to tie into the corporate strategy. So that is one example. I've also been involved in the youth council. That is something that I was really passionate about when I first got elected, there was a dementia-friendly borough, but there was a little bit lacking for younger people. I think that the previous administration had tried to run a youth council, and I think Lancashire County Council did have a youth council at the same time, but I wanted us to have our own debating young people that find out what they're interested in, mental health, climate change. So we got 8 or 9 young people coming from 3 or 4 different schools, all understanding how the council worked and things like that. And that was something that I have been part of. And something that we need to acknowledge and recognise is that when those young people turn 17, they all move on, and we have to start looking at how we recruit constantly for the Youth Council, because I think it's really beneficial. We actually ran a democracy day last week, which I attended, and I think 13 of the 23 young people who went to it want to sign up to the Youth Council, which is really good news for me. And they had an understanding of the budgets, how the council works. They all got cabinet positions and things like that. So for me, that's really good about people understanding public service and how they can influence their local community. So that's a second item. The third item is still in development, and this is to do with the participatory democracy, and it's about setting up a People's Assembly. So at the moment, we have to do statutory consultations on things like car parking and council tax and the budget as part of a citizens panel. It's a very dry format. It's a link to an internet page where people have to go on and answer loads of questions. We also do consultation through the community hubs, and we also do a citizen survey. Now, the citizen survey comes back with facts and figures about the number of people that are satisfied, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't tell us why people might be satisfied or why they might not be satisfied. So what I want to do as a listening council is I want to drill down and find out why people might be unsatisfied and what we can actually do to make a difference. I might be overselling it a little bit, because the People's Assembly is probably going to look at a specific issue. For example, we're going to roll out the food waste collections, and it might be that we use something like that to bring people in to talk to them about what would be good about a food, that type. So it'd be very specific, project based. But what we would also create is advocates for that project to go out into the community and go, well, these are why we had to make these decisions, these are the parameters, and this is what we have to do as councillors all the time within the remit of our budget and things like that. So it's like a double thing, where then those people can go out and advocate for the council and say, well, this is why they made that decision the way they did. So that's so just on that, I was waiting for that scrutiny report that you mentioned earlier to come out, so I could use that, see what was mentioned in there, Councillor Pillinger, about participatory democracy, and use that as a bit of a board to a platform to launch this from.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor, you've just spoken eloquently about young people. So if I could just ask you a little bit about that. So how do we work with partners delivering youth services, such as the County Council, housing associations and parish and town councils, to A, avoid repetition and overlap, and B, ensure that we maximise the additional impact of anything that we are doing?
Thank you for that. I think that every opportunity we get to invite partners in, we do, in terms of working with young people. I think that it's probably better for the director because it's operational in terms of who they reach out to speak to. But I know that we reached out to Lancashire County Council when we set up the Youth Council. I think we reached out 3 times, and I don't know why, but they didn't want to. They wanted to run their own maybe, but they didn't want to work jointly with us on ours. But I think that you're probably better.
We're very much led by the Youth Council themselves, who they want to talk to and approach, and they set their own agenda and their own projects. So we're very much led by the young people on what they want to do. I think, as you say, we did reach out to Lancashire County Council, and we weren't successful in that. But the more youth engagement, from my point of view, the better. And I don't think we would want to, I think we're happy to work with Lancashire County Council and engage as much as we can. And I know the young people in the youth council were happy to engage with any other youth councils within that area.
Yeah. Councillor King, this is
Yes, can I take...
progresses on, doesn't it?
Yes, can I take you to page 67 and of the big bullet points, bullet point number 4. Could you talk us through the commission to deliver activities for supporting people not in education, employment or training?
Yeah, I think Jen's probably better for answering that in terms of the contractual and the work with you develop. But in there it's got the abbreviation NEAT, which is it's for young people that haven't been in education, employment or training for around 2 years. And I think after COVID, I think it's a cohort of young people who after COVID struggled to get into the workplace, maybe between college and work or from school to college. And I think we work with the Department for Work and Pensions on projects with this. And so I'll just let Jennifer fill in the details, but that's the overall objective, and there's quite a large cohort in South Ribble of those people.
Yes, so we've commissioned You Develop to work with those young people. So the first off is identifying those young people. So we work with Department of Work and Pensions to identify who they are. Then we work with, originally we thought it would be nice to work in group work and do group work with young people who are NEET. That's not been successful. I think people tend to want the one-to-one support, which is what we're doing. So we've identified them, then we're trying to identify what is causing them to be NEET, what is the barriers between education, barriers to work. So it may be that we do and put some training programs, it may be mentoring, it may be mental health and linking them through with mental health. So it's very much individualised for the young person. A lot of it is that they may just simply need support with transport, that it could be that simple, or it may be more complex, particularly with mental health issues. And what we've also found with young people is, particularly with because of COVID and confidence building is a big thing with young people at the moment, and the ability to go into a workplace. So they've been linking with volunteering opportunities to get them some experience and some additional information on the CV. So there's a range, and it's very much catered for the individual.
And I was having a look at the numbers of this NEETs group, and it is quite substantial, and the number of people on unemployment benefits since 2024 has been on quite an uptick in South Ribble. I was wondering, you've mentioned in terms of attaching to volunteering and transport and things, what has the council done and what can it do to connect young people and people out of work with opportunities that they can aspire to?
Yep, so I know there's the work that we're doing with our on apprenticeship schemes. So obviously ourselves, we're developing apprenticeship schemes. We're also supporting businesses with how to apply for the apprentice levy and working with businesses to really link them up with young people. So there is quite a bit of work that our business support teams are doing, looking at with the apprenticeships and establishing apprenticeships, but also we're working on our own apprenticeship schemes as well.
Thank you. I'm going to, just for the members of the committee, I'm going to omit the next two questions. I think they can be put for written answers, and we'll, because we're running later than we'd hoped to be, we have a couple of supplementary questions from Councillor Green, if you'd like to take that.
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor Bowinski-Gowdy, yeah, I've got a couple of questions. One on the community side of the portfolio and one on the customer side of the portfolio. So on the community side, can I take you to the bottom of page 67? And there's reference there to nearly £54,000 worth of grants for community integration and £39,000 worth of grants for local resilience. Could you give us details of what those grants were for and what projects they actually funded and what was achieved as a result? If you don't have all the detail this evening, a written response will be sufficient, but a flavour of it will be helpful this evening.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I can't give you a breakdown of what was spent, but the community integration grants are in relation to the Forced Migration Action Plan. We have got a budget in combination working with Lancashire County Council on a forced migration strategy. And so this provides funding for infrastructure, resettlement. We also have a resettlement caseworker in South Ribble and a family-based prescribing link worker, and we have a community integration officer as well, who's since 2023 supported 100 individuals and families to settle in South Ribble. I'm not sure if the funding supports it, but we've got a housing options team which supports refugees to find temporary accommodation once they receive their right to remain status. And we also do amazing work in funding initiatives for those who have a right to remain to support them into employment, health and well-being, community development and English-speaking courses and things like that. So anything they might need. And so I think this funding is really important because forced migrants represent some of the most vulnerable members of our community, and so it's money well spent.
Okay, thank you for that response. And if you could give us more detail by written response, that would be helpful to all members. Thank you. Turning to the customer questions, so if I could take you to page 69, please. And it's talking about the performance of the contact centre and the performance, according to this report, remaining strong. And it makes reference, third bullet point down, to 77% of calls being answered within 5 minutes and an average wait time of 3 minutes and 42 seconds. You've made reference before about asking questions on a regular basis about the sort of response times, etc. So from the responses you've got from that, could you give us a flavour of what the shortest response times are and what the longest response times are?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have those figures off the top of my head, but what I do speak to officers about is why they fluctuate, why it could be 8 minutes or less than 3. And it's because, I mean, I'll let Alison come in, but it's because the council business fluctuates throughout the year. When we have a subscription going online, for example, the brown bins, which is garden waste, we get a lot of people ringing in. We've got lots of people ringing in about the school uniform shop when that happens. And so when things change throughout the year, we've got the same number of staff in the call centre answering complicated questions to people, and we want them to give our residents the time when they do get through. And so it's getting a balance of quality over quantity. But I think Alison can probably answer in a little bit more detail.
If that detail would be suitable for a written response, I think that would be the best option at the current time. Not to cut you off, but we are now gone 8:15, so we need to go for written responses to allow us time with another person.
And by me.
We were going to ask you the question about having a magic wand. I'm sure you'd love to have a magic wand to focus your passions through about the thing, but you've been very clear on that. Are there any questions from members not on the committee? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. It's just that the Youth Council, we invite them on our climate emergency task group. Just wondering if there's a provision for them to attend any other task group or even select a task group they'd like to run themselves. And the other question would be around ESOL. I just wondered how what the uptake of that was, and where do we get that provision from? Thank you.
The Youth Council are welcome to ask to attend any meeting. It's just a matter of the officer capturing that and asking them, so they're welcome to do that. And I think Jennifer might have the figures for the English language uptake training.
If you've got those figures again, they could be sent to us in writing. Thank you. Do we have any formulations for our recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from tonight the committee might like to recommend. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and officers for attending and answering questions. The committee is grateful for the Cabinet Member agreeing to review the Cabinet response to the scrutiny review of resident engagement and democratic participation, particularly around partially accepting some of the recommendations. The committee commends the work of the Cabinet Member and work within her portfolio, supported by officers, and the committee wishes the Cabinet Member well with the People's Assembly project. And finally, the committee looks forward to further information and a breakdown of grants paid for community integration and local resilience grants. Thank you, Chair.
Just sent it for you to have a look at.
Are you happy with those recommendations? Thank you. Thank you for your time spent. I'm sorry we've overrun the time we had allocated for ourselves. We will be spending a little time on working out how we can be more concise, but I think there will be in the future some cases for written answers rather than spoken ones. Thank you. We really need to finish this by 8:30, but it's only 10 minutes. Can I just say thank you to the officers? We have overrun more than I'd hoped, and I don't want to shortchange Councillor Farnworth. We're coming to item 9, the Cabinet Portfolio Update. We had allowed 20 minutes for this, which would put us through to 20 to 9, but we will try and be as brief as we can while still giving you the opportunity that we wanted to give you to respond to our questions and to make your comments. We note, we're grateful for Gail Wootton for being with us, and for, is Carolyn Wolfenden online? Yes, I can see her now. Thank you for bearing with us over this time. I'm going to take our first two, well no, we're going to give you an opportunity to speak to your portfolio first. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to thank members of the committee for inviting me to talk about my portfolio in terms of what we've achieved and what we're currently working on. So I took this whole portfolio on just under a year ago now. Councillor Tomlinson deserves the credit, I think, in terms of putting parks alongside events. I think it was a bit of a no-brainer. So I've put my comments in the report that you've received, and I think it's been a really good sort of fusion of two teams working together in terms of parks and events, and it's really made us sort of think about how teams can work together for a better outcome for the whole borough. None more so than what we're doing on Worden Park, for instance, and you know what we're trying to do is spread this across the borough, and I think it'll be a really good outcome. So I think my vision is clear. So I really want to continue the fantastic work that this Labour administration has delivered, particularly since 2019. We've got a proud legacy of putting money into communities by investing in over 50 different parks, open spaces and playgrounds projects. And I think many would say that's the actual envy of Lancashire. So Fox Lane, for instance, Margaret Road, Tidygate in Lostock Hall, Moss Side, Hague Avenue, Kingsfold in Penwortham, Longton, Hutton, and who can forget, it was actually this administration that helped save Strawberry Valley Park on Bent Lane in Leyland, which is now, and along with all our other parks, a growing example of community cohesion, children playing together, parents talking together in the fresh air, all free at the point of use for our communities. Now, this is what this administration has been about, and that's what I'm about. We all saw how important our parks and green spaces were during COVID a couple of years ago, so we've continued to invest in them for our communities to use. Now, in terms of parks, over the last year, we successfully obtained the borough's 5th Green Flag Park in Farrington, which now joins Longton, Brickcroft, Withy Grove, Hurstgrange and Worden Park, with the latter being placed proudly in the UK's top 10 Green Flag Parks, which I think is a really significant achievement, and I really want to thank all the officers and our volunteer groups for the tremendous work. It's only the 2nd park outside of London to maintain its Green Flag status continuously. So over the past year, I think I've made some bold decisions in terms of both parks and events, which I'm more than happy to talk you through in detail in terms of the questions that you might have. Whether it be a change to our events programme or listening to residents when they don't want something, just like I did with proposals for Nixon Woods. We're a really, I think we're a really listening council, and as a cabinet member, I do try and listen. And each member or even resident has my ear, and they're more than welcome to visit any of our venues, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Now, in terms of events, last year we delivered some fantastic ones by ourselves or in partnership with others, such as Penwortham and Longton Live. We did a Taste of Leyland, the Leyland Christmas light switch on, as well as music in the park. And we can't forget as well that we marked the dedication to our armed forces community in terms of what they make and continue to make when we funded the Remembrance Day Parade in Lostock Hall, the VE Day celebrations with music in the town with the Leyland Town team, and the VE Day commemorations at Tidygate. So this year we've been developing the cultural strategy, which will be published hopefully after Wednesday's cabinet meeting. So it's just a bit of a shame that this meeting has come just before that. So that's, as a result, it's meant that we've reviewed our events calendar to better reflect what we found when we've been consulting with various figures and bodies throughout the borough and outside the borough. I mean, for many years, people like my ward colleague, Councillor Bell, and I know Councillor Howarth alluded to it the other day in full council, argued that this council needs a full cultural strategy to help us guide in terms of our communities and ask, what are we're about. And many people might actually ask, what is culture? And for me, and this strategy, it's about people, it's about belonging, connectivity, and having pride or visibility. So it shouldn't really be an added extra. It's part of our life here in Safe Ribble, and I think sometimes in other local authorities it can be overlooked. There's not a price on it. So even though we do face growing financial pressures to balance the books, I must give the leader and Councillor Roberts every credit as we look to adopt the cultural strategy, and I do hope once you see a copy of that, it'll be something to be proud of. Now, like I said, we've revamped the new corporate events calendar, which has retained some of what we did really well, but we've also expanded it in terms of our community events and put events at people's doorsteps throughout the borough and not just in one particular place. I think over the past year, we've also seen Worden Hall that's grown from strength to strength, and that's no doubt thanks to our fantastic officers that we recruited last year, who have been working tirelessly to work on wedding packages and functions. We took the bold decision to bring things like the bar back in-house and to use more variety of caterers. We've created things like wedding brochures and publicity materials to get income in. We've had several wedding fairs, and I think I'm generally pleased in where we're going with that. And we've also got, in terms of on Worden Hall, all the small businesses that we work really closely with as well. I can't lie, we've got some key decisions to make, particularly on the future of the Sainsburyville Museum, and I believe an options paper will be coming to either Cabinet or full Council in due course. But like I said, I think the fusion between events and parks has been really, really worthwhile. The work the park team are doing to make Worden Hall an even better venue is really welcome. So we're doing things like revitalising the fountain in the gardens, introducing a schedule of charges for the use of our parks for external events, for instance, and we're also working on things, for instance, a walled garden. So we went out to tender, and we've got some really exciting plans with a partner on that. Or whether it's supporting things like the Leyland Festival or our new Parks Alive series, I think it all positively contributes to our borough as a whole and directly to our residents and our communities. I'm nearly finished, but I'm also proud that the Council's adopted its first Parks, Play and Open Spaces strategy in January this year. I think we can all agree that it was a really comprehensive document which contains a summary of what we have done and what we want to achieve within 2 years, and then it's got a further 4 years on top of that of sort of aspirations. So in the next 2 years, we've got, I'm really excited, we've got 14 fully costed parks, play and open spaces projects throughout the borough, with a scope for another 22 from Section 106 and SIL monies within the years following. So that strategy will focus on biodiversity, more investment and safety, and particularly women and girls and those who are most vulnerable in our society. So basically, I just want to say we're delivering things in our communities. So whether that's playgrounds, investments, maintaining our green flag parks, putting on events across the borough, and back to our communities, and bringing people together is essentially what we want to achieve. And I think, you know, it's important we're getting things done, and that's what we're about. And welcome any questions.
Thank you. You've already answered 3 of our first questions, so which is really helpful. Your enthusiasm is showing through in your presentation and your speech. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go to Councillor Bollenberg. You're happy with that? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Green, you had a supplementary on this, I think.
Yes, I did. Councillor Farnworth, good evening. There's mention in the report of the submission of the bid for UK Town of Culture. If the expression of interest is successful and we move on to the next stage, what are the likely costs to the council, obviously in terms of capacity and capability, and would we be able to do it, or would we need to recruit additional staff?
Thanks for your question, Councillor Green, and I'd hope as a fellow Leyland councillor you'd be more than willing to back the bid for the Town of Culture to come to Leyland. I think it's a really good question. In terms of the income that it could generate if we are shortlisted, I believe it's around £60,000. Obviously, I don't know I can't say, you know, that I know in terms of the costing for staff. I don't know if Caroline can help on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we would manage that, obviously internally, through our communications and visitor economy team. As Councillor Farnwood said, there is a funding allocation for any council that is successful in the expression of interest stage. So you would receive £60,000, and that is to support you in developing the bid. So we'd obviously work with external organisations to scope what that might look like and taking that forward. And you know, if we were successful in winning the bid, there is financial funding allocated to the successful council to deliver the programme in its bid. I think there is, I'm trying to remember, I think it's about 3 million, I think, for the successful council, and then £250,000 for the runners-up.
That sounds very nice to get if we were able to successfully compete for that. Thank you. Councillor King.
Yeah, so you actually have already answered my first question, but let's test your sales skills, shall we? Can you give us a quick elevator pitch of what this Parks Alive event is and what was the rationale for setting it up?
Thanks for your question, Councillor King. Again, really good question. So, Parks Alive is essentially what I wanted to do when I took over the portfolio, is to bring events to every corner of South Ribble. In terms of using our assets, obviously, you know, we've got 5 green flag parks there, and work with the local communities to bring small to medium events into communities and into people's, you know, back gardens. So it was sort of an inspiration in terms of, again, working between the parks and the events team, and we've sort of looked at best practices. Over in Charlie, they have things like picnic in the park, for instance, but we wanted to do our sort of own version, you know, own Safe Ribble version, because, you know, like they are for local people, but, you know, we more than welcome people to come into the borough to show a different offering. So the Parks Alive programme is from May to August, so I can't remember off the top of my head how many events there are, but essentially there's going to be events on in Tidergate and Lostercall, I think at Lockton Brickcroft there's one, in Withy Grove in Bamber Bridge, Worden Park, for instance. So there are a series of events, small and medium events. Some are sort of like picnic brass, so for instance brass band. Some are aimed towards the younger generation, so I think there is some sort of play that's going on. We're doing things like beer festival at Worden Park, that's the 24th and 25th of April. And stuff like that. So we're doing things a little bit differently, and that's one thing that's come out of the cultural strategy that I think people we're sort of looking at the council to say, you know, what's happening on in our sort of community. So I'd encourage all members, and we're working with the sort of friends of groups as well, to try and make the event a success. So I'll share more details with you after Wednesday.
Thank you for the enthusiasm again that you show for those things, and it's good to see some new ideas. Councillor Bollenberg.
Yeah, it's just a quick point of clarification. On page 78, areas for development and improvement, bullet point 1, you say STEAM data, STEEAM. We're just wondering what STEAM means.
So I'll give you a rough definition in terms of obviously the visitor numbers. You know, we've seen a slight decrease from the previous year, but I think we've seen that throughout the councils in Lancashire. I think there was one. I think it was Charlie that bucked the trend. You know, we are sort of conscious that our sort of new events package will hopefully come to that contribution. I don't know if Caroline can add on to the exact definition that STEAM data is.
I actually can't remember what the acronym is.
It's all right, actually. It's all right.
There's no too far to be fair.
So it's all right. So I've got it here. So it's the STEAM stands for Scarborough Tourism Economic Activity Monitor, which is a tourist economic impact modelling process used to manage the economic impact of tourism, including visitor numbers, revenue generated, and employment supported by tourism.
I think that's a clear example of how an acronym can confuse matters. If you'd put that in as what it is in the text, it still wouldn't have left us any wiser about things. Thank you for that explanation, and I'm sure we'll hear more about STEAM, going back to STEAM even. Yes. Councillor Green, are you satisfied that the question about the museum has been answered?
No, I do want to ask that.
Okay.
Something else as well. Thanks, Chairman. Before I touch on the museum, can I just take us back to page 77 a minute? And we're just talking about the progress at Worden Hall and the level of investment there. And on the back of that, we've now had some bookings. So in a 16-month period, there's 29 private events in the diary. which is a step forward, but nevertheless that average, if my maths are correct, that's one private event every 17 days. And if that was a private operation, there's no way that that would stack up financially. So what are our plans to actually increase the amount of events that we can attract to Wordenall to make it more financially viable?
Thank you, Councillor Green, for that question. I am a big believer that Wordenall is an absolute crown jewel in terms of our sort of vision, in terms of the package, the whole package that we can offer tourists and people here. In terms of you know, we've not always got it right, we have to admit that, but I'm really confident that with the additions of the members of staff and the officers, particularly in the last 6 to 12 months, that we are seeing increasing more bookings. Obviously, I think the figure was it until December. So since then, we've done quite a lot of internal events in terms of, you know, we've done things like Meet Santa and stuff like that. We've done carols by candlelight, for instance. They've been working really hard behind the scenes, and I don't think we'll see the fruition up until another sort of a couple of months in terms of a couple of years. But we are seeing an increased amount of income steadily. I've got the figures here, and I'm more than happy to share that with the committee. It's looking like, you know, it's really positive. The changes that we've made, they've not been subtle, and like any sort of, you know, private business, or if you're a public business, you know, you need to get your name out there, and that's what we've been doing. Our staff have been going to places like wedding fairs. We've got wedding brochures here. We're doing more in our communications than we've ever done. And as well, it's not just about weddings. So, for instance, we recognise that we've had to get the infrastructure, such as the IT equipment and the Wi-Fi equipment, back up. That's being worked on, so we can then invite corporate clients to come in for you know, business days or workshops and stuff. So that will again increase our income as well. And we're seeing an increased number of parties, you know, private parties and private functions. So you've got my word, it is going in the right direction, and you know, we're keeping at it. I think things are different this time, and hopefully next year we'll present you with you know, increased income, and you know, we've got that many bookings. We're actually having to look to increase our team at Worden, you know, for the first time, which is a really, really good achievement, and I think everything will get better, and yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Obviously, we've made a significant investment as a council, so I'm sure we all collectively would agree that we hope that will be successful, and we look forward to seeing that progress rapidly over the months ahead. Just touching on South Ribble Museum, you referred to it before, Councillor Farnworth. Why has it actually taken so long to get it reopened and to give the residents of South Ribble access to those museum items?
Thanks for your further contribution, Councillor Green. I have to say, it's been I think there's been a number of issues that have cropped up in terms of, you know, obviously I think it's been closed since COVID. In terms of, you know, the functionality of the museum and the building, you know, to reopen. You know, I think it is in need of substantial renovation and substantial monies spent on it to get it reopened to whatever form it is, whether it's a museum or another entity. And also we've just recently recruited a new head of culture and heritage. So I think getting that post in was crucial before we decided on the future of the museum, because, you know, it's something that is really important to this borough, and it's really important to me to get it right. We are going to look at several options. I can't hide behind it, but I think those options are, in terms of, you know, they'll be presented to you in cabinet. But you know, you've got my word that we will look at all eventualities, and we'll hopefully update you as soon as we can.
Thank you. Councillor King, are you happy that we... Yes, thank you. Just the magic wand question. If there's one thing that you'd like to see done in your time, what would it be?
Thanks for your question. Well, like the magic money tree that we all crave. But no, I think that's been the ultimate factor. I think, you know, we have previously had bold visions, you know, in terms of things, you know, like music in the park, for instance. But I think we've had to be, you know, we've had to look at our finances and make some bold decisions in terms of that. And if there's anything that I could have, it'd be money to put a really big music festival on over a couple of days on Worden Park for all ages and all genres. But
yeah, yes, we would need a magic money tree, I suspect, for that. Are there any questions from members who are not on the committee? Councillor Tomlinson.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment, really, rather than a question. And you asked the two previous presenters what they had personally done, and you haven't asked Matthew that question. But I think what I would say is about all the Cabinet, what they do is they set the tone, they set the agenda, they give officers permission to think outside the box and to come forward. So when you heard Jennifer before saying they've come forward with ideas around supporting our more vulnerable resident, that just doesn't come from them thinking, oh, I've got a great idea or I've seen this. It comes from the tone that's being set by Cabinet. And so quite often what we do as leaders of this council, we do give our fantastic officers permission to go and look at things that they might not look at under a different leadership, style of leadership or a different administration. And I think that's a really important point about how this Cabinet operates.
Thank you for your point about the way it works. I had missed out that question on this one because the enthusiasm of the presentation actually answered the question. But if you wish to say anything more, no. In which case, I think I have Councillor Martin wishing to ask a question.
It's more of a thank you, really. Obviously, Penworth and Leyland and Longton have led the way with events in South Ribble, especially Penworth, obviously because of the enthusiasm of the people who set up the Penworth Live event and Nigel. But on a serious note, what has done point at me? What the serious note is that when you attend these events, if you do attend these events, and I know Councillor King would like to attend more events in the capacity of enjoyment rather than selling what his wares, that the buzz and the feeling for that moment doesn't just last for that moment because it happens to buoy up people. And referring to Councillor Barley-Gelder here with regards to looking after people, enjoyment is one of the things that keep people sane, keep them full of hope. And as a Cabinet, the roles that they take individually, they may not fully appreciate the gelling that happens out in the community because you can't be everywhere. But I am sure that our events and our work has probably improved a number of lives we will never know about, and more so, we probably kept people enjoying their lives as well. Thank you.
Do you wish to make a comment on the comment? No, thank you. I think then we've completed our work, except for any recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from tonight. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Directors for attending and answering questions. The committee commends the Cabinet Member for the work undertaken within his portfolio. And finally, the committee is grateful for the offer of further information on progress with the commercialisation of Worden Hall. Thank you, Chair.
Are the committee members content with those? Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and I'm really sorry that we were overrunning as much as we had. I looked at the material we had for tonight and thought, this is great, and hadn't really taken full account that even when you've got such great material, there are still quite a lot of questions to ask. And we need to look as a committee, I think, about what can be answered in writing, because some of the detailed stuff might be better dealt with in that way in the future. But thank you for your time, and we have a couple of other items on our agenda, but officers, aside from those officers who are helping to run the committee, thank you for your time. Thank you, Caroline, for being there online, and we're grateful for your time with the committee, and we will look forward to seeing you again in the future. There are two items left on our agenda. One is the meetings attended by committee members. I had the opportunity to go to an LGA conference as a stand-in, spending time with Councillor Tomlinson on an LGA leadership training module relating to local government reform, which was fascinating, because one of the things that I believe quite strongly is that this committee and the other scrutiny committee have a key role to play in ensuring that local government reform happens in a way that is best for our borough, as well as for the other boroughs that we might end with. So we will be, those meetings at Warwick University are really good weekends, and we will be circulating, as soon as we have the dates, we'll be circulating the dates for the new council year, that is from May onwards, so that we can take opportunities to do that, to use that training availability. I would thoroughly recommend. I've been now twice, and both of them have been really good weekends, as much for the networking with people from other councils as for the material, the excellent material you get. I've looked through the Cabinet forward plan. It seems to me that the Cabinet are balancing their time and the needs of the council. There's work that's got to be done, but they're prioritising well. But would you please look through those, and if there's that, and if you've got any comments to make, we can then use that as a basis on which to call people in. We may need, in my mind, to specifically ask the leader and the chief executive to come and speak to us about where things are on LGR. That may be something we need to do before the new council, in our next meeting, if we got the time in with other matters on our agenda. But I will talk to Darren about what we can do with that. Thank you for your time. Sorry we've gone on for so long. We need to find ways to be smarter in our work, I think, in the future. I just hadn't realised quite how much we would be asking questions about the material that we've had today. Thank you again. You're happy to finish? Yeah, meeting finished.